Okay, three, two, one. Good evening, everyone. It's Team Nine, and I'm Manoj Panjwani. We are here to talk about the Tiffany and Co. quantification exercise. So, quick look at the agenda. We've got the company background, and we'll talk a little bit about how we built the model, the methodology that we used, and then look at the scenarios and also look at the impact of the shocks. So, a quick recap on Tiffany and Co. itself. It was founded in 1837. Has an international presence, more than 300 stores, and over 90% of its sales come from jewelry. So in terms of how we went about it, where we sourced the data from, we looked at the company's 10K, its balance sheet, the profit and loss and the cash flows, and also the MDA. We looked at the investor presentation, which was made in April 2016, which provided some forward-looking short-term strategies and projections. And it's worth mentioning that some information was easy to locate and some took a little longer for us to calculate. So for example, COGS was quite easy to find, but units sold we had to calculate based on the total revenue and the average price per unit, which we found in the 10K report. In terms of business segments, as we mentioned before, three of their key business segments account for more than 90%, whereas 90% of revenues, whereas watches account for 7%. And so it's the latter segment that we decided not to focus too much on, just to simplify the model. In terms of the baseline model items in building the model, we looked at a number of lines, some of which came straight from the financial statements, and some we had to sort of build in. And some of the numbers flowed down from the customer numbers. Also, based on the scenarios, we chose some items to shock, and where appropriate, we had to combine categories. So here's a quick snapshot of the assumptions and the headline statements that we looked at, and to look at quickly the model number assumptions. Sales revenue growth were up by 5%, which we derived from the investor presentation. COGS went up by 39.3%, and so on and so forth. And it's worth mentioning here that dividends were assumed to be zero, and they're fully retained in the business as invested assets. Just to drill down a bit further on the units sold and the price, we've assumed that for the three segments, sales will grow by 1, 2, and 3% in terms of number of units, and in terms of average price per unit, they'll grow by 2%, 2%, and for fashion jewelry, from 3%, 3.5%, phasing down to 3%. We looked at the company value to ensure it was reasonable relative to market cap, and there was a difference of 8%, which we were comfortable with. And in addition to looking at the company value, we also looked at the 5-year revenue CAGR and the 5-year EPS CAGR, which the model captures. There were some challenges in putting this information together, which we've described in this slide here. I'll now pass it on to Matthew, who will talk a little bit about the risks and the scenarios.
Hi everyone, thanks Miraj. So now I will talk more about the scenarios. So according to the 10K report, we developed 5 major key risks. So you will see the first one is a brand competitor, and the second one was a supply risk and the customer experience, business outside the US, and also the financial risk. So here we choose a 3 sample in our presentation. We want to talk about the risk scenario. You can see the first one we use as the competitors. When the Pandora plans to sell the wedding and engagement jewelry, and we assume the price will be 30% lower than Tiffany's, and then will attract 20% customer of the Tiffany's to start to choose the Pandora. So we put numbers here to make sure we can run the model, and then we got our result, which is they will have a 0.2% effect, a change in the company value. So here is another example we use in the risk scenario. It talks about when one of the biggest diamond supplier of the Tiffany got bankrupt and emerged with a new company, which can actually offer the lower supply price for Tiffany's. Actually, also we assume here is a Tiffany buy a new business insurance, so which you can see we put money here, Then what we find out, it do affect the company's value. It will have bring the 4.7 percentage change in the company's value, company value. And the last one will also assume the scenario is about customer experience. So we assume Tiffany spent a lot of money on the online shopping, but actually they didn't feed their revenue goal. And we put here to want to see is whether they will affect the change in the company's value. Then we find out it's actually the 0% change. So we use this 15 scenario to identify the major important things will affect the company's value. Now I will pass this to Tianyi. He will discuss more about the shock.
So shock impact. This is what I keep hearing, the holy grail of ERM. So you see the range here from negative 2.3 to positive 4.7. And look at all these key risks that we quantified. Half of them bring upside, half of them bring downside. And especially for these top 5 downside scenarios, only 1 of them are financial risk and 4 of them are strategic, which is exactly what we talk about in class. Most of the companies only focus on financial risks, but they ignore the other risks. But in fact, most risks come from financial and strategic, or come from strategic and operational. And some of the shocks we find are really surprising. Like we used to think, that's like a common sense. Chinese and Japan, the market is very big. That's 25% of the entire Tiffany market. But when we actually quantify these risks, the impact of the Chinese yuan depreciation is only negative 0.1%. And for the Japan, it's like also close approximate to 0, which is very surprising. So that's again, you cannot rely so much on media and common sense. You have to actually run the model and quantify these risks. So also the supply bankruptcy. Most of the time, like people think when the supplier bankrupt, it's gonna bring like huge demand to the company. But since they have this good risk management program, mitigation plan, and insurance plan, is the value of company actually gonna increase. So that's another surprise for us. So it's very important for value-based ERM to include decision making. So our model give Tiffany some of the advice for decision making, focus more on line system, focus more on suppliers, and some of the consumption power in Indonesia do not overestimate the consumption power because people there probably don't spend that much on Tiffany. So some quick summary we either talk about include decision making, use accounting concept but do not focus too much on it, imagination to develop all these scenarios, and company value matrix is more important than other metrics. Thank you.